This podcast is recorded on the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people.
British Columbia, I've seen your mountains high, seen your pretty rainbows and your blue crystal skies, watched your winding rivers as they flow around the bend. To me, you're not a stranger, you'll always be a friend.
Coming to you from the West Coast, this is Polititoast. Today is October 24th, 2019. This is episode 161. Polititoast is the BC Politics podcast. Tell us what you think of the show by leaving us a review or get at us on social media. Thank you to our patrons for your support. Your generosity makes this show possible. Help us build the show by throwing us a couple bucks a month at patreon.com/Polititoast and by recommending the podcast to a friend. Editing services are provided by Cortado Productions. I'm Scott DeLondeboom.
And I'm back. Well, I'm Ian Bushfield, but...
You're also back.
Yes, I'm back. Let's do this.
Welcome back.
On today's...
Parenthood going well?
Yes, it's tiring getting up multiple times a night, or even just having the partner get up multiple times a night, but baby is doing very well, which is good.
Rested enough to podcast again, which is great.
We watched the election results together on Monday night and thought about recording hot takes after that, but I think we were both pretty tired, and it was like everyone has opinions on it. But today we'll give you ours.
Polititoast is in partnership with BC Today, British Columbia's daily newsletter dedicated exclusively to BC politics. Sign up for a free trial to have unique coverage of the BC legislature delivered to your inbox every morning. Listeners to Polititoast enter the offer code CITIZEN, all lowercase, for access to a special rate. For your free 2-week trial of the newsletter, go to britishcolumbiatoday.ca.
Big new announcement. On Friday, November 8th, 2019 at 3:30 p.m., we're going to be doing a live show at the Vancouver Podcast Festival. You can find details of that at vanpodfest.ca and probably in the show notes. The event is free. Come on out. We'll try and get a guest to be confirmed, but it should be a lot of fun. And I'll be hanging around all of Van Podfest as I did last year, because it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of cool live events, and yeah, good time.
Well, let's jump into our first segment. When the Bloc wins, everyone loses.
It was an election.
Yes.
It was a good election to sit out. Honestly, I said that before I went on leave, and
Did anything change your mind about that at all?
Well, there was blackface, and then there were these rounds of debates, and there was too much Maxime Bernier.
There's the fake insurance broker scandal.
God. There was the two planes. There was the Andrew Scheer's a U.S. citizen and went to the States without his passport one time. And I was like, I don't care. But I was happy to see a bit of a #uprising near the end. But it turned out that didn't even really come to fruition. So maybe let's just get right into the results. Not the most interesting one, but one of the top line ones that I was watching for is what would be the turnout. And it ended up being 66%, which was better than I was thinking on election day.
Yeah, some of the early numbers, actually, I think we're coming in around the high 50s.
Yeah, I was trying to calculate as they were coming in, at this rate, what will be the turnout? And I was like, it'll probably be around 60%. So that's good. It's not the 69 to 70 that it was in 2015, but that was a modern high watermark of our democracy is 3 in 10 people didn't bother to vote. So maybe we can still keep people inspired. I think everyone knows the results by now. The Liberals reduced to a quote-unquote strong minority, whatever that means, with 157 seats.
I think it just means they don't have to strike together two other parties to pass legislation.
Only one, and we'll get to them. The Conservatives got 121 seats, up from the 99 they won last time, but the 95 they had at dissolution. The Bloc was the winner of the night, going up to 32 seats from 10. The NDP shed 15 members down to 24. That's 20 fewer seats than they won in 2015. The Greens picked up 2 seats for a total of 3. And Jody Wilson-Raybould won her Vancouver Granville seat.
And will be the lone independent.
And the other big result of the night is the Conservatives won the popular vote by just racking up the scoreboard across the prairies, who are now jokingly, seriously trying to separate. I don't know.
I don't think they're seriously... It seems to be more of a Twitter thing.
I think there's more people mocking them.
Yeah. But Not that certain premiers in the Prairie Province haven't been leaning into the apparent dissatisfaction.
And once again, the West is apparently Alberta, Saskatchewan, and they just assume BC will agree. But as I think we'll get into the BC results, they're
Well,
not as unanimous.
It's like the prime meridian of Canada going through the Rockies or something, where you like loop back around and it becomes east once you cross it.
Pretty much. I mean, we're all
The
hippie
geography
liberals.
makes no sense here.
Yeah, we're all hippie liberals on the coast. The results here in BC, unlike Alberta and Saskatchewan, where the Conservatives got almost 70% of the vote, here they only got 34% of the vote, which is up a few points. The Liberals were down a bunch of points to 26% in BC, meaning they went from 17 down to 11 seats. The Conservatives went up to 17 seats. The NDP tied the Liberals at 11 seats and almost the same vote share, slightly behind at 24.4. The Greens didn't manage the breakthrough they were hoping for. They only held essentially Nanaimo, Ladysmith, and Elizabeth May's riding of Saanich Gulf Islands. And of course, Jody Wilson-Raybould won. What did you take from BC's results?
It's hard to, like, there wasn't actually all that much interesting about it, or surprising, I should say. It was kind of what I expected to happen. I mean, the province, once again, has shown that rural-urban split with the Conservatives taking pretty much everything past Langley, with, I think, one NDP seat, a couple NDP seats up north along the coast, and one in the Kootenays.
South Okanagan.
South
I
Okanagan.
think it was where it was.
Yeah,
roughly.
South Okanagan.
And the island stayed pretty orange.
Yeah,
as it's been.
Yeah, that's the thing I was actually curious about, is whether Victoria and Cowich and Malahat Langford, I think is the riding, whether those two would flip or not. And the NDP still ended up coming out with a decent margin on those, somewhere on the order of 5 to 10 points ahead of the Greens.
Yeah, the close races in the province ended up being kind of in the Tri-Cities and the suburbs. It was later in the night when Port Moody finally flipped from, that was Finn Donnelly's former seat, to the Conservatives. And that, I think, was a three-way race between Conservatives, Liberals,
just
and
watching the
NDP.
results come in, it was flipping back and forth between all three of them.
And Burnaby North Seymour,
That's the
the
other
Liberals
interesting one.
have kind of held the lead all night, but, Sven Robinson was close trying to take Terry Beach down. The Conservatives were also in the game there.
Even though they
And-
shouldn't have been, which was weird.
Yeah, I think because Heather Leung's party affiliation was still on the ballot because the Conservatives disowned her too late. People didn't care.
She also was campaigning as a Conservative, which, that's actually something I was a little surprised about. There isn't a way for a party to, once the ballots are in, for them to say, no, you can't actually run under our banner. Like, you think there'd be like at least a trademark infringement argument going on or something.
And I think the other close result was in Langley, where previously the Liberals had held on to that seat, but in the end the Conservatives took it back. And that feels like a Conservative area, but, sometimes it can flip. But let's go nationwide and kind of go through each of the parties from probably the biggest loser to who was the least loser, because as we said on the top, I think everyone kind of lost. So the People's Party and Maxime Bernier.
Yeah, he did not manage to win his seat at all, and the Bernier Vanity Project seems to be coming to an end. Although he did put out a defiant election night speech about how they were the fastest growing party and whatnot, which I guess if you start at zero, any change has to be positive.
Infinite growth. Divide by zero. No, that's an asymptote. Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on Bernier because I think we've already all spent too much time on that party. I did see some good Beaverton headlines, Bernier too racist even for Quebec, things like that. That's all good. Frustrating he was given time in the debates. Frustrating they aired most of his concession-ish speech. But
That's
I guess
only
there
because
was
he didn't
nothing
get
else.
interrupted by other leaders. But we'll get to that in a moment.
Yeah. Will the People's Party stick around? Will we see Maxime Bernier anymore?
I don't think they'll stick around. Like, this really did seem to be a Bernier vanity project, and without a seat in Parliament and a way for him to remain relevant, it's going to be hard to keep the people who signed on to it motivated.
All those Reddit edgelords, they'll have to go somewhere, I guess, but maybe Scheer can finally woo them back. There wasn't that many, though. I think only...
So I did see some stuff in the last couple of days saying that, if every single People Party vote went to the Conservatives, they might have picked up to 6 more seats. Still wouldn't have put them ahead, but,
That is not as, big of a vote split as I think maybe I hoped for. I mean, I'm glad they got less than 2%, but probably enough said on the People's Party. Let's move up to the Greens and Elizabeth May. In their defense and in their favor, they did get 3 MPs, the largest ever Green caucus in Canadian federal history. It's the first election since 2008 where the Greens haven't lost votes, or at least a vote share, as in 2011 and 2015, Elizabeth May's party had fewer votes than the previous election, despite her getting her seat. And the beachhead on Fredericton is pretty noteworthy. It kind of gives them both coasts.
That was kind of one of the early surprises of the night, was when the Greens managed to pick up Fredericton. I believe they hold the seat provincially.
Yeah,
but,
they have a couple.
Yeah. Up until the 2015 Liberal sweep of the Atlantic provinces, I'm pretty sure that seat was held by a Conservative. So it's been an interesting one that's kind of gotten passed around a bit. But yeah, now the Greens have a seat there, both federally and provincially, and it's looking like the Greens have become more of a coastal party.
Well, and things were looking briefly good for the Greens in the middle of the night when CBC's election tracker, for some reason, gave them an extra 8,000 votes in Winnipeg Centre and put them in first, but that disappeared when they finally fixed that.
Yeah,
glitch.
the Elections Canada site didn't have that.
So no Green breakthrough in Manitoba. Maybe next time. But I think the big issue for the Greens was they came in with high expectations and kind of dashed them all. And we'll get to the kind of how the NDP was the exact opposite, but the Greens were talked about as they'll have a dozen MPs possibly, they'll have official party status, and they'll have kingmaker abilities in a minority parliament. And then they started the campaign with a number of scandals and kind of fizzled through it.
Scandal might be too strong a word, controversies. But yeah, they were unable to carry that momentum once the writ had dropped. And I think a lot of it's just, they weren't really good at the campaigning aspect of the campaign, which is pretty much all of it. They had issues around whether or not the party vetted their candidates, what the party's stance was on things like Quebec separatism, access to abortion, and whether or not these were quote-unquote core values that they expected their MPs to abide by.
And it all kind of goes to show that Elizabeth May is really good in Parliament and really good as an MP, but is actually really bad at campaigns.
Yes.
Outside of her own constituency.
I mean, the media likes her fellow parliamentarians like her, but as someone whose arguably primary job is to go out there and convince Canadians to vote for her party, she's just really bad at it.
And I think the other challenge they face, especially now, is the NDP campaign included a lot of strong climate points. The Liberals talked about a lot of strong climate points. Does that just undercut the entire purpose of the Greens? Greens will tell us no, but for most Canadians...
It shouldn't, because when everybody's talking about your core issue, you should be able to use that to your advantage and leverage it. But the Greens weren't really able to do it. They kind of sat around and said, this isn't good enough, we need to do better, but weren't able to really, I think, sell Canadians on their vision, or even really do a good job of laying out what their vision is and how to get there.
And why the other parties, in their view, weren't good enough. We got a little bit of it in the debate, especially when Jagmeet Singh and Elizabeth May were going toe-to-toe. But I think just the number of leaders up there and the format prevented a good, deep policy debate that we need on these climate issues.
Yeah, and there's also stuff such as when the NDP put out a bunch of flyers in the South Island attacking the Greens. The Green response wasn't to hit back, it was to kind of complain about a standard campaign tactic. Which
They're not playing fair.
Yeah. It's one thing to do politics differently, but if it just means doing politics badly, it doesn't actually help anything. And the Greens, I don't want to say should have gone negative, but they should have been willing to hit the NDP a lot harder on stuff. And their unwillingness to do that, I think, cost them.
Like, what info did they even get from Warren Kinsella? Remember, they hired him to teach them the dark ways so that they could be ready to defend against them.
For like a week before they let him go.
But
it turns out he had a contract with the Conservatives, too.
Yeah, I like how he got to bookend the election. Anyway, he deleted his Twitter.
We've talked about Kinsella too much already.
He deleted his Twitter. That's a good thing.
So with the Greens, like, their big thing is we have a climate emergency. It's really important. We need to get acting on this right now. Yet it's kind of surprising they haven't taken that urgency and directed it into learning how to do politics well. Because it's one thing to, be right about an issue, but if you can't actually convince people or acquire and then use the political power to actually implement your correct vision, it doesn't actually do much. And for some reason, the Green Party doesn't really want to grapple with having to actually do the dirty work. Not even the dirty work, just the political work of politics.
So I would ask, does Elizabeth May stay on? But today she already gave us the answer. She said, in her words, she's not planning to see through to another 4 years. If there's an election in the spring, if this parliament falls apart really quickly, she's pretty sure she'll still be leader, but she is starting to look at an exit strategy, but will still stay on as an MP for Saanich
Gulf Islands.
Saanich Gulf Islands.
Which isn't exactly surprising, considering it was revealed earlier this year that she offered Jody Wilson-Raybould the leadership.
Oh yeah, I forgot that story. So,
once again, doing politics badly.
It'll be really interesting to watch the dynamics of the Green Party in this parliament, and particularly Paul Manley and the Fredericton MP, whose name I'm going to have to learn.
Janica Art, but that's the New Zealand prime. It's similar to that, though.
I'll have to learn both their names. Whether one of them emerges as a potential leader, I don't think Andrew Weaver's going to seek the job, even though he's going to be unemployed soon.
Janica Atwin is the name of the Green Party MP from Fredericton. Yeah, Weaver seems to want to be done with politics. I can't see him making the jump to federal leadership. So it's same thing we talked about, or I guess I talked about with our guest when Weaver announced, is that, it's easy for the two other people who are in the caucus. They're the best positioned to, but one of them's a first-time MP, and the other one has questionable aspects to him, which may or may not become a liability.
Well, and has only been an MP for 3 months
longer,
or something like that. So it'll still be a race to watch. But let's move to the Orange team, the winningest losers, the NDP and Jagmeet Singh.
Are they the winningest losers?
Are they the losingest winners?
Well,
depends if you're an optimist or a pessimist.
I would actually put the parties that gained seats, not lost them, which there are at least three of them in this one.
So the NDP...
it exceeded expectations is probably the best way to put it.
That's just it. So the NDP lost 15 seats and are 20 seats fewer than they had in the previous election. It's the fewest seats and the lowest vote share the party's received since 2004, which was Jack Layton's first election. It's essentially half the vote share they got under Tom Mulcair, obviously less than they got under Layton's last one. It seems like people got, and it's less than even the polls were showing. The polls were showing this 18 to 20%.
There's the whole talk of a surge happening, which didn't materialize.
At least didn't fully materialize.
Well, their vote share more or less aligned with the polls that we saw in like the week prior to the big surge. They got a total of 15.9%, and that was kind of what the polls were showing before it jumped up to the 18 to 20 that the surge talk had.
So it seems like a lot of people got to the voting booth and decided for the strategic vote for the Liberals, as happens so often. As the Beaverton headline said, I think that morning, I'm just going to keep referencing the Beaverton, reluctant NDP voter marks ballot for Liberals once again.
I actually think that's just a rerun of their 2015 headline.
Honestly, it may as well have been. The reason it still wasn't such a failure is at the start of the campaign, there was talk of the party not getting official party status, pulling only single-digit percentages, returning 5, 10 MPs. I think for a while they were potentially looking at wipeout.
There was one moment where the poll tracker's projection had them at like one
or two.
No, that was it. The range hit 0, the bottom end of the range of projections.
So coming back with 24 MPs is in some ways, an asterisk victory. And I think even more importantly, Jagmeet Singh is the most popular leader by a lot. All the polls in the last week that looked at leader favorability had him at like plus 50 or something. I saw one Angus Reid. There were some absurd numbers. There was no one who disliked him, which is new for any politician. And so that was cool. And that's where I think he is a bit more immune to leadership challenges. But we'll get to that once you complain about how they've actually lost this all.
Oh, well, my point about them losing was that, in fact, they did significantly underperform where they were last election, also the several elections before that. And I think as importantly is they weren't prepared for the election. They rallied, and Singh's a good campaigner, but the party went from still a very good showing in 2015. I mean, didn't live up to their expectations, and they lost official opposition status, but they still had their, I think, second best showing of all time, did well, and then kind of the 4 years in between, they were racked with organizational problems, funding problems, and as a result, just weren't able to have the resources to effectively campaign and really actually leverage the apparent improvement in popularity. Matt Gurney and TVO had been doing a series of articles with strategists from the various parties doing a kind of post-mortem on the election. That was one thing the NDP guy said. Or actually, I don't know if it's guy. It's one thing the NDP person said was that they just didn't have the money to put out ads in the Toronto area where they, in theory, could have picked up a bunch of seats or even held some. And as a result, just because Singh didn't do a great job in the time before the writ dropped, they probably did worse here than they could have otherwise. And that's going to be the test going forward is, does a person who's a really good campaigner have the skills to hold a party together outside of an election?
I agree. The one caveat is, I don't know if we can put it all, it all comes back to the leader in any of these political parties. But I feel like with the NDP, there's been such internal bullshit, frankly, for 4 years. And it reminds me actually a lot of the situation of UK Labour prior to the last election for Corbyn, where the party is eating itself and it's eating itself. And then they get to the election and they actually perform really well by inspiring a lot of people and suddenly start shooting out. Now, Labour did a lot better than the NDP just did, but you have this situation where it's if you hadn't been eating each other and just get out there in front of people, which is easier said than done.
They're both losing winnable elections, but still.
Anyway, I just want to blame a bunch of the old backroom NDP strategists who are still Singh needs to quit. And it's everyone under 50, I think, who's a New Democrat is actually not happy, but has some optimism for the party, which is better than I could say after the 2015 election. And I think the other thing that's valuable here for Singh is his party has enough seats that, together with the Liberals, they can pass budgets and things like that. So the NDP has some power, frankly. They're not the only party that can do it, but there's some opportunity there to advance the goals that he campaigned on, which is actually, ironically, more than Tom Mulcair had after a majority when he won more seats, or even Jack Layton in 2011. Minority parliaments are going to be fun. So, on the question, does Singh stay on as leader, I think as long as this minority parliament remains, Singh gets one more kick at the can at least through the next election, whether that's in 3 months or 4 years.
Yeah, in fact, he's probably one of the few leaders that shouldn't be replaced after this election, but we'll be getting to those shortly as we move into the Conservatives. So, arguably, they could say they won in the sense that they got more votes than anyone else. They got a plurality.
They're just like Hillary Clinton.
But yeah, like Hillary Clinton, they ended up losing because the electoral system is not great.
Is that the electoral system that 2015 was the last election held under?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's also the problem, is that the Liberals are absolutely going to learn from this that they were right despite the electoral reform.
I think they knew very early.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they we'll get to the Liberals shortly, but if they hadn't screwed up, they shouldn't have needed that edge anyway.
But that's just the thing. Trudeau and the Liberals had wounded themselves on so many different files. Like, governments defeat themselves, and in this case,
they did everything possible to defeat themselves.
You just needed an opposition that was competent and looked ready to govern all of Canada, and the Conservatives and Andrew Scheer couldn't bring that through.
Yeah, if you can't beat a guy who's had a major corruption scandal and a blackface scandal within a year of each other, right before an election, you kind of got to wonder what's wrong with it. And somehow Scheer managed to be less appealing than, well, the person I just described.
So he did pick up votes, as we said, from 2011 or 2015, but it seems like he just really consolidated the Conservatives in Saskatchewan and Alberta. He picked up seats largely in the prairies.
He did grab a couple, like they
There
won
were a
back a
few
few
in
the
Atlantic Canada.
Yeah, in the Maritimes. I think they might have picked up a couple in Ontario.
But they didn't make the gains in Ontario and BC that they needed to. They did pick up a few in BC, but it was that Toronto region. It's that same TVO series with the Conservative Insider that's really fascinating, of just like, we needed, he says, or the person says, we needed to get Scheer in a pride parade to make him less scary. We couldn't do that, or we didn't
Actually,
do that.
it came out today he doubled down on his refusal to do it.
God.
Absolutely refusing to learn from any mistake on this. But I think that's also part of the problem, is it was very much an attempt to rerun like the 2008 Harper campaign in a lot of ways. I mean, including fear-mongering about, actually no, the coalition thing followed that, but including, carbon taxes, all that stuff. And the problem is, the country's moved on by 10 years, and the stuff that could eke out a minority for Harper doesn't help Scheer very much outside of the people who he already appeals to. And that was really his big problem, is he did nothing to win over anyone who wasn't already predisposed to vote Conservative. And, the things that arguably had broader appeal, like some of the, we're going to put more money in your pocket, it was nice, but none of that was the sort of thing that would actually convince someone to like stand in a line for half an hour to vote for someone or trek down to a polling place.
Well, and he got scooped on some of them. Like, the big Conservative promise was this universal tax cut, which was increasing or lowering the tax rate of the lowest income bracket, which gives most people a tax break.
It's
and
about
it does
as good,
favor
it's about a
higher ones.
Yeah, it's about as good an income tax cut as you can do.
Well, and then the Liberals rolled out, we'll raise the basic personal exemption amount and roll it off for the rich, so it actually only benefits low and middle class people, which then has the same effect, roughly, but also doesn't look like a handout to rich friends.
I mean, I don't think it really, outside of the people who are...
Economist Twitter?
Yeah, I don't think the Scheer tax cut really read as a handout to the rich.
But in either case, the Liberals ran a slightly different policy that had the same effect, largely for most people, of being a tax cut. And so if you wanted a tax cut, the Liberals still had that.
Yeah, well, I mean, they basically spent the campaign arguing back and forth when they bothered arguing policy at all about small little tax cuts here and there. Overall with Scheer, just nothing to really grow the tent. And that's part of a general problem with political strategy these days, is that for some reason there's a general wisdom that what really matters is turning out the base. And I think we saw the limitations here. And the BC Liberals better be watching this too, because they're running the same strategy right now in BC. And as we saw from this, it's not guaranteed to work at all.
Well, and this is exactly what Scheer did to win leadership. And the difference there is Conservatives are predisposed to these messages.
Yeah, and even then, he had to go 13 rounds and ultimately emerged because he was the compromise candidate.
And only by less than like half a percentage point over Maxime Bernier.
Yes. So I think we talked about why Scheer wasn't able to deliver and convince people, but that I guess brings us to the next question of what happens to Scheer, because under the Conservative Party constitution, any general election which they lose at the next convention, which is, I believe, in April, sometime this spring, they have a mandatory leadership review, and it's precisely that he was the compromise candidate, which is going to make it tough, I think, for him, because nobody's thrilled with Andrew Scheer. People supported him. He was I don't like the other faction of the party more guy, so I guess I'll put Scheer as like my number 5 person on the ballot, and like everyone did that. But it also means you have no one to, like, there's no part of you no part of the party other than, I guess, the dairy farmers who are like really thrilled with Andrew Scheer and will make a point of coming out to support him in a leadership review.
I think, speaking to family and friends who are back in Alberta, he did grow on Conservatives there. Across the prairies, he started to get a bit of support.
How much of that's the rally behind the flag effect, though?
I think some people started to talk about Scheer himself.
Okay.
But again, it's still, if there's someone else in the wings, someone more interesting, someone who can bring a message. And we already saw that during the campaign when those Peter MacKay leaks came out, which he, of course, denies. Peter MacKay would never want to steal a party from someone in the midst of an election. But I think the knives start coming out over the next few months. And Conservatives don't strike me as the party that's going to do what the NDP did to Mulcair. He's probably not going to lose a leadership ballot, but if he gets, 60%,
yeah, I mean,
that's
the
pretty much
conventional
dead.
wisdom is anything under, 75, 70 is...
Sometimes it's even 80, but,
yeah.
If there's a sizable portion that's pissed, you should probably look for new employment.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, ultimately, I think Scheer's failings are... I mean, it's not unrecoverable, but I don't think Scheer has the temperament or, more importantly, the political instincts to realize what those issues are and correct them, which probably means he should be replaced. Ideally by a kind of red Tory from Ontario if the party wants to win again. And, I mean, it's become more and more a prairie-centered party, but the voting system's weighted by riding, so it actually gives enough voice to the rest of the country in the selection that it's quite plausible that the next leader could be from Ontario, and as long as it's not Doug Ford, it would probably help them.
Just before we move on, what do you think of the Jason Kenney for federal Conservative leader wishing? I don't know what it is. Rumors.
I don't think he's going to leave out the Alberta premiership in his first term.
That's my gut as well, especially after he just introduced a massive austerity budget.
Yeah. Plus, I think he likes the role of being premier of Alberta better than.
Oh yeah, you get to scream at
opposition.
Ottawa all day and not take responsibility for any, issues with your own province. You can do things like say, if we don't get pipelines built, we will cut services for our own people further.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jason Kenney is, for some reason, popular in Alberta, and gonna win re-election unless he royally screws the things up, and it's a
Hey,
safer.
look how many times Ralph Klein got reelected. You can screw up a lot.
Yeah, it's a safer position for him than trying to win leadership and trying to win an election on pipelines next time. So yeah, I don't think he'll make the jump. I'd be looking for one of the other kind of heavy hitters from the Harper cabinet to jump in, but we'll see.
Or Brad Wall. But I'll
Actually,
just throw that out there, and then we can move on to the federal Liberals and Justin Trudeau. So you wouldn't know it from Trudeau's election night speech that interrupted Andrew Scheer's concession speech, which wasn't a concession speech.
whose own concession speech interrupted Jamie Singh's speech.
Although Singh was going long, and I felt that. Even as a supporter, I think he spent too long. He was too excited congratulating and thanking people that he forgot to get to the main part. So I get why Scheer came on. I don't get, other than just being a childish dick, why Trudeau came on a minute into Scheer's speech. But he's one of the first PM in Canada who didn't get a majority after winning a majority the first time or something like that?
Trudeau Senior didn't.
Okay. First since then. Or in 50
I think
years.
most interestingly, this is the lowest vote share that a prime minister has ever won.
So they lost votes everywhere. Some places more than others. They managed to hold Toronto. The votes they held in Ontario is what basically kept them in as good a position as they're in. The campaign was bad from their point of view, or from my point of view of how they did.
Even the Liberals I know aren't thrilled with it.
The sunny ways of 2015 are gone. It's just like a cloudy, ominous, storms on the horizon kind of situation. The only good they have is that they have a clear minority, a clear plurality, and their GTA base is still holding and strong. But it seems like on a razor's edge of them, if either the NDP or the Conservatives had gotten a couple percent more in the popular vote, a whole bunch of seats would have flipped across the country. Well, other than the Conservatives picking up more votes in Alberta, which I guess is possible.
At some point, you're pushing North Korean elections territory for the Conservatives. But yeah, the Justin Trudeau of 2015 is well and truly gone. And what remains was hardly inspiring or even really appealing to most people.
Yet, still a third of Canadians who bothered to vote did vote for his party.
Yeah, he didn't hit the levels of dissatisfaction with the Liberals that Michael Ignatieff managed to accomplish.
Or Stéphane Dion.
Yeah, but overall, it was bad for Trudeau. He didn't really have a good vision to sell Canada for a second term. It was mostly things aren't too terrible, and if you can overlook my massive flaws, it's probably worth returning a Liberal government. And it's actually interesting to see how much Trudeau was de-emphasized from Liberal campaign materials this time.
Well, and especially individual candidates. I think Catherine McKenna, most famously in Ottawa Centre, started to stop even using red on some of her signs.
And there's a certain amount of that just should have happened anyway, because they went all in on Trudeau last time to an unhealthy amount. So this, at a certain amount, there should just be a regression to the mean on that. But they went well past that and de-emphasized him a lot. And ultimately, I think this more reflects the fact that the Liberal brand itself was better than the Trudeau brand. And that managed to carry them over the finish line.
And so I totally agree with that. And I was thinking just that, the Liberal government was actually pretty good. Most of the problems were Trudeau, like the Aga Khan scandal, the SNC Lavalin was pretty much the PMO and their influence. The blackface scandal was literally Trudeau's own history. And it's all him as a person.
You take Trudeau out of it and the Liberals would have won a majority.
And so the question then becomes, can they take Trudeau out of it?
It's very hard to jettison a prime minister.
/ will they?
Yeah. Also, I don't think the Liberal Party has a mechanism to jettison a sitting prime minister from within their own party. He basically has to resign. I believe. But don't quote me on that. What they'd be smart to do is start getting some succession planning in place. So someone like Krista Freeland could come in because she would have won a majority. There's a bunch of other Liberals who could have pulled off the same feat too. And yeah, there's just a lot of better Liberals to run the party and frankly the country too. And I think that was also part of the problem is that like the world's a lot more uncertain than it was when Trudeau first got elected. And I don't think Trudeau's done a good enough job that he's convinced Canadians he's necessarily up for the challenges that the modern world has. And granted, most leaders haven't met that bar. I mean, Scheer certainly didn't, which, yeah, like just as an aside, that if the Conservatives are looking for someone to win, they should be going for like a boring, like highly competent upper management type person to contrast very effectively with Trudeau.
Oh, but the Conservatives are trying to play a populist streak, and so the anti-elitism.
I'm saying if they want to do well, not if they want to continue their current strategy.
So on Trudeau, yeah, he probably sticks around as long as he wants, and that'll probably be as long as he's prime minister, for at least the near term.
Or until there's enough internal dissent over the possibility of losing the next election, which, like, if he doesn't turn the ship around quickly, they are very in danger of doing.
And as we know from history, Liberals are incredibly loyal until they're not.
Yeah. And I don't think they're at the until they're not point yet, but if this minority government, if, the next year doesn't go well for them, and it very well could not. Something we haven't talked about yet, but they no longer control the committees in Parliament, so expect to hear a lot more about SNC-Lavalin coming up and a bunch of other stuff like that. It's going to be harder for Trudeau, and he can't count on having a parliamentary majority that's just going to go with him on anything.
Which is going to make the Senate even more fun. But before we get to that, let's talk about the only party that probably has nothing but good vibes coming out of the election, the Bloc Québécois.
Yeah, they're back.
Yeah, and it's amusing.
Which, admittedly, I did not predict. I think most people probably missed this one.
I mean, maybe some people in Quebec who actually follow Quebec politics and understand it might have seen
most
it.
of the Anglo-Canadian punditry completely missed this one,
but yeah,
ourselves included.
Getting back up over 30 seats, proportionately, I think they were the fastest growing party, not the People's Party. They now have the clout and the seats to extract wins for Quebec. Yves-François Blanchet, I think, actually did a really good job in both the debates. I know at least in the English one, he was there, probably the second most comfortable person after Jagmeet Singh.
That's because he didn't really... I want to say that's just because, but he definitely had an easier job because he wasn't really competing for too many votes there and could just basically do let's talk about how great Quebec is and how much we'll stand up for it.
Yeah.
And just be the snarky foil to everyone.
Yeah, so he's basically Lucien Bouchard, Gilles Duceppe reincarnate and can do no wrong in the eyes of Québécois.
I immediately like federal politics better when we didn't have a
major separatist party.
Exactly.
Yeah. Running quickly through some of the other notable things on election night, some unfortunate losses of parliamentarians widely respected, like Ralph Goodale and Lisa Raitt from the Liberals and Conservatives.
Yeah, I think both of them are big losses. I think Lisa Raitt's going to be particularly missed because, well, she was very well respected in the party, and outside of it, she's also deputy leader and did just a generally good job on a lot of files. And I also was a person that Scheer listened to and was a moderating influence quite a bit. And yeah, she unfortunately lost her seat in Milton.
It'll be cool to see how Adam Van Koeverden does, though. What is it with former Olympians and joining the Liberal Party?
I don't know. Just
seems like where they go.
Yeah.
For the NDP, I was happy to see Jack Harris get back in out east. And I was kind of sad to hear Emily Tamman, friend of the pod, did not get elected in Ottawa Centre. And that wasn't even close.
I thought it would be a lot closer.
It used to be an NDP riding. It was Paula Dewar's safe hold. And Sven, of course, I was hoping to see break through just because he brings something unique to Parliament when he was there. because he rebels against everyone.
But it does say something interesting about BC and the pipeline reaction, that they weren't able to unseat Terry Beach in the riding. He turned out to be a lot more, I think, formidable than expected, and the pipeline issue didn't hurt him as badly as I thought it would.
Well, and the Greens picked up 10% in that constituency because they ran, Amita, I forget their last name, a non-binary candidate who's also a nuclear physicist professor, I believe, from SFU, astrophysicist. Someone very smart and who I would widely respect, and I know some people who voted for them, and I'm like, I get it, and I almost would have, but spent. So, tough split. Like, Terry Beach did not cruise to victory there by any stretch, but as you say, it's the TMX flashpoint. Beyond that, we've already talked about the committees, and that's what I'm definitely going to be watching.
Yeah, actually, just one other, thing spin off the Burnaby North thing. That overall, the Liberals held most of their seats in Metro Vancouver, and particularly the Vancouver seats themselves that were expected to be the most vulnerable on the pipeline file. And with the exception of Vancouver-Granville, which the MP got re-elected even if it's no longer under the Liberal banner, there wasn't much change in the city itself or even the surrounding next ring of municipalities.
Yeah, you have to get to Zone 3 on the SkyTrain, or the future Zone 3, as Langley is.
Well, Coquitlam's on Zone 3 too, and there was that big change we talked about earlier. But yeah, let's move on to what this means going forward for the Parliament. They're not rushing back. Cabinet isn't going to be named until the 20th of November, which is significantly later. They had it in place for the 5th last time.
And I suspect it'll be largely similar.
Yeah. I mean, they're missing Guelph, and they have we don't have anyone between Manitoba and
Vancouver.
BC. So that's going to be a fun thing to do, regional balance, especially because we're not the West. So you can't really put a West candidate or representative in there from our BC MPs.
And there aren't Liberal senators anymore that you can name to cabinet, so...
Although I've seen quite a few people in the chattering social media punditry talk about the possibility.
Or I guess you could have a non-elected cabinet member, but I don't think we do that anymore with our modern conventions, as Andrew Scheer would say. For me, the thing I'm going to be watching is whether Trudeau acts like Paul Martin circa 2004 or Stephen Harper circa 2006 to 2011. Is he going to be the cooperative, try and make deals with the other parties, or is he just going to play brinksmanship and dare everyone to bring down his government? And I worry it's going to be the latter.
Yeah, I'm not sure he really has the finesse of either of those two. So how that goes is going to be interesting to watch. I think the only thing that might moderate, at least for the first year to 18 months, is a bunch of MPs who were first elected in 2015 want to hit their 6th year so they can get their pension. And 2, a lot of parties are broke and will need time to prepare for a new election. So between those, you can probably count on it being a bit easier than afterwards.
And I think the Bloc will probably end up being the saving grace for the Liberals more than either of them want to admit. The Bloc has no interest in bringing down the government, and as long as Trudeau just makes some quick and easy concessions, like the first thing Blanchette has already asked for is that the Liberals keep their commitment to aid for the dairy industry, because as he said on election night,
supply management is us.
En français. Such an inspiring line. And so
really sums up a lot of what is wrong with Canadian politics.
Blanchette is basically just looking for some easy handouts from the government, and Trudeau can do those, or he can do the much heftier, pricier asks that the NDP is looking for. So I don't see why he wouldn't just give the Bloc a treat and be able to continue on, and the NDP will probably vote for it anyway, or, it's 13 seats he's looking for, so some Conservatives may even just miss a day when they want to keep things going. And if TMX comes up for whatever reason to a vote, he's got lots of Conservative votes to rely on. So
yeah, exactly. And Morneau's already said that TMX isn't going to be part of any negotiations with the other parties. So they clearly feel they can hold the line on that one. But we will now jump over to some twit-tates to round this out with what's been happening in BC.
Very interesting today. The government just released the bill to essentially bring BC laws in compliance with the UN Declaration on Rights of Indigenous People.
So this has been inspected for a while. There's a bunch of questions on how they were going to do this, and that has been put off to future bills because this is we're going to commit the government to do this bill, and the complicated and no doubt will be messy discussions around what does free, prior, and informed consent mean with regards to resource projects, and whether that is or is not a veto, and whether it should or should not be a veto, will be in future legislation. So we can look forward to that.
Yeah, I think the telegraphs ahead had been that this would be a massive bill or series of bills, and it ended up being fairly short, the bill itself, but still a lot of pomp and circumstance. The bill matches what was essentially passed by Parliament, but then died in the Senate before the election, which, like you said, just requires that the government eventually bring it all in line. But there is one additional bit to BC's law, which is it gives, or it will, if it passes third reading, give the cabinet essentially the authority to negotiate with First Nation governments, whatever those governments take. And so there can be a nation-to-nation relationship between BC and the Indigenous communities of this province in these lands. So that's really interesting. And I think that part is more unique and stronger. And so it's good to see, and it'll be interesting to see if more is to come later this week. The other thing that happened on this issue, this file today, is the bill that the government had introduced, I think early in this fall session, was the bill to share casino revenues with First Nations communities. That passed today, 72 votes to 1. The only MLA who voted against it was BC Liberal Norm Letnick. And I found that interesting because one of the BC reporters was tweeting about it. Letnick voted against it and broke lines with his own party because the Okanagan Indian band in his constituency asked him to. And that band said, we dislike this on principle because we'd rather the money go straight to us and other First Nations rather than be funneled through over an umbrella council. That seems like a reason. Like, I don't know the debates, but I appreciate that there's a thought out.
It's a reasonable reason to break from that.
And on a one vote by principle, okay. But it was good to see that pass. It'll be interesting to see what comes out in committee and the further debates on this UNDRIP bill, and if there's more to come. But yeah, good day.
Moving on, the BC Green Party has launched a clothing store, and if you ever really wanted to have Andrew Weaver's face splashed across your chest, which apparently the thinking is that there's a lot of people really clamoring for this, you can go and get that. So we'll throw the link in the show notes. I mostly bring this up because it's just kind of funny, especially picturing Weaver as like a Shay type thing.
It's weird.
It's weird. It's funny.
They do have an infant onesie, which is cute. All baby clothes are so cute, as I've been learning. It just shows the green logo, though, so it's not the greatest one. So you don't need to buy it for me, dear listeners, or for my baby. But I appreciate the creativity that goes behind it. The creativity, though, is not there with the newest political party in BC, the BC Eco-Socialists. When you go and look at their logo, it's an eyesore. It hurts. The color contrast hurt.
I was wondering if it was just because I have partial color blindness that was bad, but no, it's also apparently bad for everyone else, too. And
it's like red and teal and inverted orca. It clashes.
yes.
But the party, quote, wants to be far to the left of the NDP and far greener than the Greens. It gets a little bit of credibility because people like Stuart Parker, who's a former BC Green Party leader and someone who's run for, I think he ran for council in Surrey
I believe
recently.
it was,
And
in the last election.
There's a number of actual political operatives, and rather than just like, who is this kind of thing. But I still
It took the
shocked.
Green Party decades to get a seat, and the Eco-Socialists are going to no doubt linger in obscurity with the other fringe parties of BC politics, which one day we should do a show on.
We can talk about conservatives again then.
And the Excalibur Party. But that's for another show. So the BC Liberals have put forward a private members bill to allow split assessments on commercial property. This is part of their affordability for small businesses push and going after the NDP for the affordability issue. That's been a long-standing part of BC politics.
I don't know if we've ever talked about this on Cambie Report, but the basic issue is you have businesses that in cities like Vancouver and some of the suburbs where the property values have risen so high that they can't afford property taxes because properties tend to be taxed on the highest and best land use. So if your little laundromat could be, a 10-story office tower,
it just tests like a 10-story office tower. And in theory, that makes a lot of sense. You do want to incentivize, the highest and best use. The part where I have or at least I can understand why that wouldn't necessarily be the most important thing, is that it's generally not the thing, especially in a hot property market like Vancouver. It's not the limiting factor. Nobody's missing the incentive to put that 10-story tower there. So, nudging the tax rates up to the point where they can cause serious financial stresses for small businesses maybe isn't the right way to strike that balance. So,
and what I like about this BC Liberal bill is it tries to focus on charities, arts groups, businesses that probably don't make a lot of money, heritage businesses, maybe families, whatever, and it gives the authority to a municipality. It doesn't just say it's a blanket change. It's if a municipality wants to give a bit of a break to businesses it likes, essentially. That's a bad way to put it, but it can, types of businesses. And I think there's a strength to that. So you can still preserve that incentive structure of the tax code while also trying to preserve some quote-unquote neighborhood character businesses.
Yeah, I'm not thrilled about trying to micromanage your business communities, but older businesses should get better taxes just because they've been around longer. But this probably isn't going to go anywhere because it's a private members bill by the opposition, and the NDP has no incentive to give the Liberals a win on this one. So it's probably going to die on the order paper at some point because they just won't move forward with it because the NDP controls the House when bills come up.
For some reason, the BC Liberals bragged in this bill about making every effort to make it as good of a bill and this is worthy of passing as possible, except they emphasized that they did not use the legislative drafting service, which was the thing created by the NDP government when they came in on advice from the Greens as a way to help backbenchers of the other parties draft bills. And now it just seems like it's Andrew Weaver's personal drafting service because I think he's the only one who's used it.
It's the same thing. It's the petty partisanship of not wanting to do something because the other person came up with the idea.
Yeah.
And finally, Linda Reid, MLA for Richmond East, former speaker and member of the BC Liberals, will not be running for re-election. She announced this today, and this is being maybe not entirely unrelated to the question she's been getting about why she isn't talking about her time as speaker and its relationship to the legislature expense scandal.
I mean, Linda Reid's been around since 1991.
I mean, yeah, she may also just want to leave politics after a long time and retire, but the timing has raised questions.
Yeah, and it's also a constituency that the Liberals are going to hold. She's only once in that time not gotten over 50% of the vote, and I think that was her first election when the Harcourt government swept in. It's a safe Liberal seat. Huh. And, she's had a long and storied career. I think she's getting a lot more flack than it's probably deserved, but anyway, anyone who serves that long. Ralph Sultan was the other one who announced recently.
Oh yeah, we missed that because we didn't do any BC politics last week to talk entirely about election platforms.
And he's the oldest member of the legislature who's widely respected as well. And so these two senior BC Liberals won't be running again, which because they've been around so long, I don't think can reflect poorly on Andrew Wilkinson, but it is also hard to, it's like when Jagmeet Singh had a whole bunch of veteran NDP MPs saying, we're not going to run again.
Also, these
are
tough. Both safe seats. this isn't a I'm worried that I won't be able to win the next election because our leader sucks. This
When-
is a I want to do something else for one reason or another. And yeah, everyone leaves politics eventually, so just happens to be their turn now.
And that's been Politicoast. Find links to everything we talked about at politicos.ca. If you're a first-time listener, make sure to subscribe and let us know what you think. Support the show and get access to our exclusive Slack channel at patreon.com/politicos. If you have ideas for the show, feel free to send them to us. The intro music credit is Beautiful British Columbia by Serge Plotnikov. And remember to find us at the Vancouver Podcast Festival on November the 8th at the library. Thank you for listening.